Hi, and welcome back to David Pattinson's Accused Friends. Today I want to talk about how we can come together as a society and cancel the cancel culture. This cancel culture has been around for quite a while, especially in the social media age. You get these social media mobs come out and bully an individual, and there needs to be some sort of endless contrition, and usually resulting in them losing their job for some sort of either minor slight or perceived slight or some sort of language they used that was deliberately misinterpreted. And I think this is totally destructive to our country, and it's elevated a lot recently in the wake of these Black Lives Matter protests. And I wanted to talk to you and say that there's a lot that you and I can do as individuals to confront this. And I think the first thing is to really totally stand up for free speech at all times. Find someone you dislike and stand up for their right to free speech. Find someone you may or may not like, but you disagree with what they're saying, and stand up for their right to free speech. I mean, you see this a lot at local levels. There'll be like a family dinner party, or there'll be a family wedding, and someone pops their head up and starts off a sentence with "I think," and all of a sudden everyone's telling them they need to shut up and be quiet. And every British citizen has the right to free speech, but they'll only be able to exercise that right if we defend it for them. And we need to really support people's right to free speech, and encourage them, and stop people who are trying to stifle dissent, which is a lot of people these days. And I think we need to really look at this very, very carefully. I mean, the Black Lives Matter people are all about confronting slavery, and yet they support unequal justice. And what's more akin to slavery than unequal justice? I mean, if you have equal justice, there is no slavery. But if you have one set of rules for black people, another set of rules for white people, then that's unequal justice. How many Black Lives Matter folks are coming out saying if a black person commits a crime, they should be punished just as harshly as a white person? Pretty much no one. Crime's becoming the new black entitlement, and they're looking to cancel anyone that speaks up against this, people like David Pattinson. So we really need to allow free speech, stand up for free speech, and, really stand up and support equal justice, which is what I've done and what I'll continue to do. I think cancel culture, though, works two ways. And if people want to cancel us, we need to be very willing and able to cancel them. And I really encourage people to try and avoid as much corporate media as you can. I mean, I did a video before this lockdown on whether Sky News was the cause of Britain's mental health crisis. There's all this stuff you might remember about how Britain had this mental health crisis, and it was this terrible thing, and the mental health sort of crisis was about to explode. And then we had the lockdown, which you'd think would, cause it to explode if anything's going to. But, Sky News hasn't really talked about mental health since then. And, they're just a bunch of hypocritical people. Get off the BBC, get off Sky News, get off most of the mainstream newspapers and start talking to your friends and family and people in your local community. You'll feel so much better when there's not all this fear-mongering hammering into you every day. There's plenty of smart people online you can listen to at your discretion. And I think that's a healthier move for society. I mean, it's these social media companies and it's the corporate media companies that foment and perpetuate the cancel culture. Let's turn around and start cancelling some of them. We also need to look at these firms that facilitate the cancel culture. I mean, I stood up for Piers Corbyn during this lockdown. I don't know if Piers Corbyn and I are that politically aligned, but he was standing up against the lockdown. I totally supported people's right to protest. He was as strong as anyone on it, and he's a top guy for doing that. So I stood up for him. I stood up for the protests for the Black Lives Matter people. I did a big video about all the benefits of joining Black Lives Matter, how people will kneel in front of you, how you'll be treated like a celebrity. And I think Black Lives Matter did pretty well out of that video. I also stood up for the White Lives Matter protest, the guy up in Manchester who flew the plane with the White Lives Matter banner, and his company cancelled him. They fired him, they fired his girlfriend. He was working for some sort of engineering firm. And, these firms that pander to the cancel culture, we need to be cancelling them. Whenever you're doing a business deal, you need to be asking that company, what's your policy on cancel culture? And if they say, oh yeah, as soon as one of our employees sends a tweet of anything remotely objectionable, they're called in and fired and we cancel their pension. Make sure you don't do business with that firm. These firms that are allowed to perpetuate and facilitate the cancel culture, they're no friend to us. And, if we're going to avoid being cancelled ourselves, we need to make sure businesses and employers are standing up against the cancel culture, not facilitating it. I also think we need to totally stop voting for any incumbent politicians. If anyone has Conservative after their name, or Labour after their name, or Liberal Democrat in front of their name, why the hell are we voting for these people? If anyone spent, they come to you and say, please vote for me, I've spent the last 45 years in Westminster, we don't need to be voting for them. I mean, a lot of this cancel culture stuff, I do a lot of videos talking about criticism of the government, but at the end of the day, we, the British people, elected these clowns. We, the British people, have been allowing these people to stay in Westminster for decade after decade after decade, and it needs to stop. If you see someone with the anti-lockdown flag after their name, you can be voting for them. If you see someone with the Brexit Party after their name, you can be voting for them. If you see someone with Independent, if you see someone with whoever, as long as it's not one of the mainstream political parties. If you see a candidate that says, I've never been to Westminster in my life, that's a good candidate to vote for. People that are standing up for our rights, our civil liberties, and our British culture, and our financial interests, these are the elected officials we need to be hiring. And people in Westminster who perpetuate the cancel culture, which is pretty much everyone, we need to be firing them. We need to be educating our children about the cancel culture as well. I mean, a lot of this hysteria is fermented by youth. And, our young people need to be educated much more. I mean, there's a lot of propaganda being given to young people in universities and in schools. And, we need to stop it all. We need to have our children go into educational institutions to learn things that are going to help them earn money and build wealth and lead successful lives. And, being taught about the cancel culture and joining the hate mob to bully people for dissent or for freedom of speech, is not acceptable. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us to point out, people who are trying to support the cancel culture when they see it. We need to put an end to that. Dissent is a good thing, not a bad thing. And, the cancel culture is totally destructive to our society. I also want everyone to have the confidence to speak up for themselves. I mean, a lot of people say to me, look, David, I'm a law-abiding citizen. I pay my taxes. I work hard. I raise my family. I feel like I'm a good citizen, and that's great, but it's not enough these days. I mean, you've actually got to start standing up for our people and our country, and there's so many of our citizens, I believe, that are just waiting to be activated. We can achieve these cultural reforms in our country, which is what I think we need to do, which is getting rid of all these left-wing, Black Lives Matter, Marxist, mob, big government type of people, and getting back to core British values. And core British values starts with British patriotic people communicating and articulating what British values are, holding themselves to account, to live by British cultural values, and also their friends and their family and their neighbours. And, I want a lot of people to really come together in these community groups, the PTA, the church, do online videos like I do, really get engaged with your neighbours and local people and your friends. I think you will find that if you start talking to them about your objections to the cancel culture, they will agree with you. They'll say, yeah, you know what, I'm fed up with all this cancel culture stuff. I just lost my job because, someone said I sent a objectionable tweet 8 years ago. And, I think it's totally ridiculous. I don't think the British people need to be saying, I'm not racist, but before they say anything. we're going to go back to innocent until proven guilty. And if anyone wants to prove racism on your part, or prove sexism on your part, they need to take you to court and prove it and go through that expense. Otherwise, we'll assume you are not guilty. So I think there's a lot of things we need to do as a people and as a society to push back against all this cancel culture, the objection of dissent, and the total conformity of thought. I mean, if you think about the immigration argument, we're always told all this rich cultural diversity is great for our country, it's great for our people, but what about diversity of thought? What about rich cultural diversity of speech? Why can't we have that? So I hope you like this video. I hope it gets you thinking and gets you motivated and fired up to get out there and stand up against the cancel culture and start standing up in support of British rights and freedoms. Please subscribe to the channel if you like this, and we'll look forward to talking with you soon.